Hello everyone. So in today's lab, we are going to see how we can restrict access to a specific VPC endpoint. In our previous labs, we have already seen how to create the gateway endpoint and how to create the interface endpoint and how to access AWS service from our private EC2 machine without the help of any NAT gateway and just by using the respective interface endpoint. So if we talk about the architecture of today's lab, we are going to use the infrastructure which we created for the gateway endpoint lab, and we are going to deploy some new components which will be required here. So if I see here, so here this was the infrastructure which we deployed for our gateway endpoint lab, where we had the which we used as a jump box to connect to our private EC2 machine, and also we have associated IAM role to access this particular S3 bucket, and then we deployed gateway endpoint which automatically created one root table in our private subnet, and then we were able to access this S3 bucket. So now what we'll do, we'll create one more EC2 machine in a different subnet in another availability zone, and then there also we'll create one gateway endpoint, and we'll be attaching the same IAM role, and then we'll access this S3 bucket. Once we are able to access this S3 bucket, then we will be applying one bucket policy which will restrict our access to only the previous gateway endpoint and block the access to all other gateway endpoints. And then we'll try the connectivity and we'll see if this connectivity works or not. So let's jump into our lab for today. So if I go to my AWS console and go to EC2 dashboard, you can see I have three machines as we discussed in the architecture. The public EC2 machine, which is going to act as a jump box, and from here we are going to log into this one private EC2 machine and also to the other one. Then we'll also try to test the connectivity without using any NAT gateway. Also, I have this S3 bucket and I don't have any object currently inside it, and this bucket is empty. And here I have one EC2 S3 role which provides a full access to the AWS bucket service. And if I go to the EC2 here and if I select one private EC2, that means EC2 2 in the 2A availability zone, and if I go to the security, and you can see I have already applied this IAM role to this particular EC2 instance. And if I select this one as well, and if I go here, you can see I have applied the same rule here as well. So if you want to see these things which we applied in the gateway endpoint lab, please see my previous lectures in this series. I have already logged in to this machine. So if I go to the EC2A here, and if I see here, this is the private IP that is ending with 183. And if I go here, you can see here the IP is also ending with 183. And if I go to my another private EC2B machine, then here the IP end is ending with 2.66. And if I see here, the IP is ending with 2.66 here. So as a next step, now we will be creating two gateway endpoints and will be attaching to the respective subnet, which will automatically create the respective root tables. And then we will try to access this particular bucket. So let me first try to access these buckets from without creating the gateway endpoint. So here I have a command which copies text.txt file to this respective S3 bucket. And I have already created in both the instances this particular text file. So let me copy this command and paste in our first EC2 instance. And if I try to execute this command, this won't work. Let me cancel this, and if I try to ping say google.com, I won't be getting any response here. In the similar fashion, if I go to the our second EC2 instance and if I paste the command here, here also I won't be able to upload the file to the S3 bucket. Let me cancel this. And here also if I ping google.com, I won't be getting any response. So let me cancel this one as well. Now we'll create two gateway endpoints and we'll attach to the respective VPC so that we can access this particular S3 bucket. So for creating the gateway endpoint, let me go to my VPC dashboard and from the left hand side menu, I will go to the endpoint and from here I will click on create. Give it a name. Let's name it my endpoint 2A because this is for availability zone 2A. And we are going to access S3 bucket, which is the AWS service. If here I will search for the S3 and select this regional one, then I will be getting the options for both gateway and interface. So I will be selecting the gateway here, and here I will be selecting our VPC, and here I will be selecting our private root table for 2A. And here let's give full access and click on create endpoint. So now the endpoint is created. Now if I go to my 2A machine and try to ping google.com, I won't be getting any response. And if I try to upload this particular file to our S3 bucket, the upload will be successful. Now if you see, if I go to my S3 bucket, you can see one text file over here. So let me delete this file so that we can upload one more text file from our second EC2 machine. Now if I go to my, so here I won't be able to access our S3 bucket till now. So for that I will again go back to our VPC dashboard and here I will be hitting on create endpoint again. Here I will be naming it as my endpoint to be, again selecting AWS service, S3 with the regional one. Here I will be selecting the gateway type, selecting the VPC here. Root table, I will be going with the default RT, which is associated with the our 2B subnet. Scroll down and click on create endpoint. So now this our endpoint is also created. Now if I go back to my 2B machine, so you can see the IP ending with 2.66. So if I again try to ping google.com, I won't be able to. Now if I try to upload this text file, the upload will be successful. So if I go back again to the S3 and go inside the bucket, here if I click on refresh, I can see the file here. So let me again delete this so that we can upload it again. Okay, so this is done. Now we'll restrict our bucket access only to this particular endpoint, which is associated with our 2A subnet, 2A private subnet. So if I go back to my bucket and go to the permissions, and here I will be clicking on edit. And before that, I have one policy which restrict access to a specific VPC endpoint. So I will be, this policy I have taken it from this AWS documentation, and I will be giving the link to this documentation and also giving this policy in our description. And also in the next videos, I will tell you how to create new policies for our S3 bucket. So here we will be needing the AR1 for our AWS bucket. So if I go here, and this I can copy it from here itself. So I just need a name. So let's replace this with a bucket name, and we are good here. If I go back to my endpoints and if I copy our ID for 2A and paste it here. So here we are denying any action on the S3 bucket if the string is not equal to this particular ID. Only this ID will be allowed. So we are good here. So if I go back to my AWS console and our policies, here if I click on add new statement, let me copy this statement from here. And if I go back here, Control B and click on Save Changes. So now our second statement is also added in the bucket policy. And if I execute my command, so I am able to successfully upload the file to our S3 bucket. So if I go back to my S3 bucket and click on refresh, you can see I don't have the sufficient permission to list the object because we have specifically restricted the access to our particular endpoint. So if I go back to the AWS CLI here and if I type this command to list the files here, you can see the text.txt file is present over here. So let me delete this file so that we can try uploading the same text file from our second EC2 instance. So if I type this command to delete this file and press enter, I should be good. So if I type here, there is no file. And if I go back to my second EC2 instance and if I try from here the command to upload the text file, here you see the upload is failed because the access is denied. And if I go back here to my first EC2 instance and try uploading the file, so I should be good. And if I list the file here, I can list the file here. So we have seen how we can restrict that particular bucket access to one VPC endpoint. So this marks the end of this chapter. I hope you learned something from it and you have liked it. So please do provide your feedback and thank you for watching and have a nice day ahead. Thank you so much.